Greetings, fellow Planeswalkers.
I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you're listening to the newest episode of the Commander-at-Arms podcast. This week on the podcast, we are breaking down 6 of the best cards in each color from the brand new set, Modern Horizons 2. So this comes out very, very shortly, and I'm hoping this comes out before pre-release. So these are the cards that we think you should be looking for at that pre-release event. Now, I know you can do pre-release events online. You can also do it in person. Go check out your local game store. But before we get into all of that, we have our upkeep trigger to do. So this has got a little extensive over the last couple of episodes, but I'm going to start off by thanking all of our patrons for their support in this show. We are branching out into new aspects of the Commander-at-Arms. I don't even know what to call it. It's not really a company, but we're branching out into new aspects with everything else, and your support goes a great way in helping us do that. So if you want to become a patron, you can do that at patreon.com/commander-at-arms. Now, Paul, have you had anything mail-wise or any interesting finds that you went through as you were diving through some of your old boxes?
Nothing in particular. I've just been putting cards together for the giveaway as I find them when I'm going through my stuff.
I've actually been doing the same.
I haven't really ordered anything, or I actually haven't really even played Magic. I played a couple weeks ago, and I already talked about that game on the last episode. But I actually did not play this weekend. I'm gonna try to get out next weekend. I've been very tired this week, so
that's understandable.
What they say, personal health over cardboard, or all that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you look after you first so that you can go and sling some more spells later on. I actually found a really interesting mail find. I guess it's not really a mail find. It was more of a really good sick deal. Now, Paul, you introduced me to the MTG Sick Deals group on Facebook. Hashtag not sponsored or not plugging it or anything. But I managed to find a really good deal on a nearly perfect metal worker that I was very happy to pick up. It was listed as damaged because it has a little tiny nick on the bottom left-hand corner. It looks like from where it was in storage, just another card got stuck to it, and you sleeve it up, you wouldn't even know it's there. So I managed to get about $75 off that card, and if anyone knows the price, you know how much I spent on that card. But again, it was one card that I really wanted for Duretti. I wanted it way back in the day. All my other cards came in for Duretti, so I won't have any mail coming in anytime soon. So this section might end up becoming a random card generated section coming up if we don't have any special mail things to really, show or I guess talk about on the upkeep trigger here. Maybe if we crack some packs, we could talk about some cards that we got out of our pack. If we pulled something like incredibly rare or something along those lines, Paul.
Sure, and I guess actually, technically, I did find a pack that my mom forgot to give for me for Christmas in her car, and I pulled an Underrealm Lich, which I didn't talk about last week, but that was pretty cool.
Yeah, actually, that pack was amazing. You got what? Was it 2 Plaguecrafters and an Underworld Lich?
2 Plaguecrafters and an Underrealm Lich. It was a pretty good pack. It was one of the guild packs. It was a Golgari themed one.
Ah. See, I thought it was just a regular booster pack. I'm like, how did you get 2 copies of Plaguecrafter?
Yeah, that's why I realized I forgot to actually mention that.
That's all right. That's all right.
But enough talking about old cards. We're here for the new.
We are.
And,
but
speaking of which, before we get into that,
we still have a couple things to talk about.
To say, James?
Yeah. Still a couple things we have to talk about before we get into some of the new cards. I loved your little segue there, but I don't mean to disrupt you here. We still have to talk about the YouTube channel, which we just launched. This one's brand new. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, we just literally uploaded our very first video on there. Go and check that one out. It is youtube.com/commander-at-arms on YouTube. Go chuck us a follow or a subscribe. Hit the notification bell. And we still have the giveaway going on as well. So that one's going to come to a close on the 15th of this month. So next week is going to be when you are no longer able to enter for that giveaway. The giveaway is for the Jund deck we put together in last week's episode. If you didn't listen to that one, go and check that one out. We kind of tell you how to pilot the deck. It is a fantastic little Jund deck that I had a lot of fun brewing with Paul. And just to kind of reiterate how to enter that one, if you follow us and retweet our giveaway on Twitter, that's gets you one entry. Our second entry is on Instagram, and you have to like the Instagram giveaway photo as well, which is just a picture of Shadow Gang Brothers. And the third entry is for our patrons only. So if you want that extra entry to the giveaway and also supporting the channel for as little as $1, you can do that. And hopefully you might be able to win this $65 budget Commander deck. Now we are on to the brand new cards of Modern Horizons 2, Paul. What do we got?
All right, before we start here, gonna say that you will see no new to modern cards, which is like a new slot that they've created with Modern Horizons 2. They already did this for Modern Horizons 1, but it's its own unique slot in a pack in Modern Horizons 2, where there are cards that already existed but are being newly printed into Modern. They were not legal in Modern before. You will not find those cards here because they were already legal in Commander, so they're not really new. These will be entirely new cards that did not exist prior to Modern Horizons 2 coming out.
All right. So we're going to start off with the Incarnation Cycle. We've finally gotten all 5 of these. And I say finally because, I mean, this is the first time Paul and I've actually had a chance to look through the full set of Modern Horizons 2. But we're going to start off with the mono green one here. It is Endurance. It is 1 green for a 3/4 elemental incarnation with flash and reach, and says when Endurance enters the battlefield, up to one target player puts all the cards from their graveyard on the bottom of their library in a random order and has evoke, exile a green card from your hand.
And just to save a little bit of time here, all of these incarnations have the evoke mechanic, which means that you pay an alternate cost, but you have to sacrifice that creature when it enters the battlefield. So each of these have evoke by exiling a card of their respective color. So Fury, you exile a red card. Grief, you exile a black card. Solitude, you exile a white card. Subtlety, you exile a blue card. They all have flash, and they all have a mechanic that corresponds with their color. So Endurance has reach because it's green. Fury has double strike because it's red. Grief has menace because it's black. Solitude has lifelink because it is white. And Subtlety has flying because it is blue. That covers most of the text on these cards. Now, the only thing that is unique to them is the ability, like James just said, Endurance, you can have a player put all the cards in their graveyard on the bottom of their library, which you can either use on yourself to recur some cards that are in there that you would like to not be there, or you can use it on an opponent. In response to them trying to reanimate something, you can make them put their graveyard back on the bottom of their library. Something to that effect. I have these all in their own category here because since they are obviously like pretty unique and good cards in their own right, I didn't want them to take up a unique slot in each color, which they would have if I hadn't done this. So these are really just honorable mentions, and there's not much that I particularly want to say about these.
Fair enough. We're going to do this in WUBORG order. So we're going to start with white. And the first one we have here on the list is Abiding Grace. It is 2 and a white for an enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, choose one. You gain 1 life or you return target creature card with mana value 1 from your graveyard to the battlefield.
All right. I was telling James that this one will probably require some explaining. A lot of these will not. A lot of these are like clearly just good cards to play. This one might take a little bit of selling. And remember that, first of all, even if you're not in like a multicolor, even in mono white has Mother of Runes, Giver of Runes. There's a lot of very powerful mono white 1-drops, one of which we'll get to in just a second, that you can reanimate with this card, and it happens at the beginning of your end step, not at the beginning of your upkeep. Meaning that the turn that you play this, you get to reanimate something if it happens to be in your graveyard. At worst, you gain 1 life, and there are cards that care about gaining life in white. There are cards that, have payouts for gaining life. For example, Well of Lost Dreams is an example of that. We'll see another payoff, again, just a little bit later, because, this card was made to, synergize with other white cards in the set.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, this reanimates your moms. This reanimates, if you're in multiple colors, Mana Dorks. It reanimates sack outlets like Viscera Seer. This card's got a lot of value stapled onto one seemingly innocuous enchantment.
The next one we have here is Break Ties. It is 2 and a white for an instant that says choose one. Destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or exile target card from a graveyard. It also has Reinforce 1, so for a 1 singular white mana, you can discard this card and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature.
Reinforce, for any of the newer players out there, is a mechanic from way back in the Lorwyn block. I don't remember exactly which set it was in. But James just described what it does for you. This is essentially a card that has 4 different modes for 3 mana, which is typically something that you don't really see. Most cards that have this many modes tend to be upwards of like 4 mana. Occasionally you will find them at 3. I mean, everybody had to have known that I was going to put one of the modal cards on here, right? Because, let's be real. You guys know me better than I know myself by now. This is artifact removal, enchantment removal, and graveyard hate all at the same time. Yes, it does exile a target card from a graveyard, but most reanimation is going to be targeting a specific card in the graveyard, or most recursion. So this is particularly potent even now with people that like to play these Magecraft decks and get cards back from the graveyard. Like, let's say somebody's got a Pass and Flame sitting in their graveyard. You can just yoink that with this card. And then, worst case scenario, if you need a +1/+1 counter on a creature, you can use it to reinforce for just a single white mana. And yeah, just a great card. This is also a common, so you'll probably end up with a lot of these cards. And if you don't open this set at all, since it is a common, this will probably be pretty cheap.
Yeah, so the next one we have is Constable of the Realm. It is 4 and a white for a 3/3 creature, giant soldier with Renown 2, which means when this creature deals combat damage to a player, if it isn't renowned, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it and it becomes renowned. Whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Constable of the Realm, exile up to 1 other target non-land permanent until Constable of the Realm leaves the battlefield.
So obviously this ties in pretty well with the reinforce mechanic we just talked about, but beyond that, in the scope of like Commander, there are tons of ways to abuse +1/+1 counters. Literally so many ways I can't even count it on 2 hands. And the most popular of which is probably with proliferating. Looking at you, Atraxa. This gets non-land permanents, which is noteworthy because it means it can get like Smothering Tithe, Heuristic Study, which I know you guys hear me talk about getting those cards all the time, but it is important. It can also get, any problematic creatures. It gets around Indestructible. It can even exile your own permanents. So that way, when this thing dies, they all come back and you get ETBs again. There are a lot of ways to have some fun with this card. And I think even at 5 mana, being an uncommon means that you're going to be able to find this card pretty often. And I think it is actually a lot more powerful than people might end up giving it credit for.
Yeah, being able to hit non-land permanents with this is probably where its power is going to be held. Now, moving on from there, we have Esper Sentinel. This is a 1 mana, 1/1 human soldier artifact creature that says whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, draw a card unless that player pays X, where X is Esper Sentinel's power. This has been floating around a little bit. And I've also heard Gavin refer to this as White's Rhystic Study.
So I would say this is a little further removed from Rhystic Study than it is from Mystic Remora. I would say it's a lot more similar to Mystic Remora. Only because it's not that hard to buff power in White. So the chances of you getting this to have somebody pay more than 1 are pretty likely. In particular, if you're playing like Elesh Norn or something, that right there is... they have to pay 3 for a non-creature spell. But yeah, this is like one of very few instances of white cards that we've had as of late that actually just straight up says draw a card on it. Well, straight up says isn't really what I was going for there. But it says draw a card on it and it's white. That makes it unique in White's aspect. I'm very curious to actually see how good this card winds up being. I mean, it's certainly going to see play, right? There's no way it doesn't. But I'm not actually sure how good it ends up being. It's going to take some play testing. Obviously, like I said, an Elesh Norn deck or anything like that, any white deck that relies on like going big is going to love this card. Even like artifact-based decks that play white are going to love this card. We just had a whole Boros precon that cares about artifacts, which is, pretty cool to give that deck a little bump. But yeah, I don't really know myself where this card ends up, honestly, on the power scale of things.
I'm the same, actually. Like, I had a whole different idea of what I was going to talk about, like what I was going to say about this card, but listening to the way that you kind of spoke about it, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm kind of re-evaluating it in my own head. I mean, it only draws you one card per turn, but that's one card per turn in white, which we don't often see.
Right, and it's maybe one card per turn, because you got to remember, like, one is not that much to pay, especially if it's only the first spell. Like,
yeah, but
a lot of spells
like,
that people play cost around 2 to 3.
Yeah, but if you think about, like, if you're the first player in a pod and you're in white and you have this card, and someone else then, plays a Soul Ring, they can't pay for that Soul Ring, so you just get a card off that as well. And, like, how many times have we played a game where there has been multiple Soul Rings being played on turn 1?
Honestly, for me, that does not happen that often.
Oh.
For some reason, the only games where that's happened are the ones I play with you.
That's because Soul Rings, super powerful, and I like
That's
to have it
because
in my
I'm just a
opening hand.
gamer, dude. You don't play with gamers that often.
Yeah. It's because I'm here to play to win, damn it. No, I'm not. I'm not, and we all know that. Moving on here, we have Nykthos Paragon. It is 4 white for a 4/6 enchantment creature human soldier. Says whenever you gain life, you may put that many +1/+1 counters on each creature you control. Do this only once each turn.
All right. This card, I seriously think, has the potential to be the best white card in the set, despite how expensive it is. That is just such an absurd line of text to print on a card, even if it's only once each turn. If you can gain life on other people's turns, then you can proc this, or trigger this, 4 times per turn cycle. And it's really not that hard to gain life on other people's turns, I'm not going to lie. It really is not. Not to mention that, unlike other effects that are worded similar to this one actually counts each point of life that you gain. So if you gain 3 life, all your creatures get 3 +1/+1 counters, and it buffs itself. That's important, because a lot of effects like this say other creatures. This guy buffs itself, as well as your other creatures. And it's an enchantment. And it's got a relevant creature type in human.
Yeah, actually, this has got everything we need for, enchantments. I mean, if you're playing an Enchantress deck, you draw a card off this. You're playing human tribal, you want this card.
Yeah, I don't want to put this out there because I know people feel some type of way about the Walking Dead cards, but I'm pretty sure one of the keywords that Rick gives is lifelink. Not entirely sure, but I'm just gonna put that out there. And I will note that lifelink gains you life all at the same time. So if you attack with 7 1/1s, you gain 7 life, and Nykthos Paragon means that you put 7 +1/+1 counters on all your creatures. Just gonna put that out there.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a go wide and go tall strat at the same time. So the next one we have here, and it's the last white card on the list, is Search the Premises. It is 3 and a white for an enchantment that says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, investigate. Investigating is you create a colorless clue artifact token with an activated ability of 2 and sacrifice this artifact to draw a card.
I have seen some discourse about this card, and that discourse has led me to believe that I don't think people are evaluating this card correctly. People are really comparing it to Smothering Tithe because they occupy the same mana slot, and I think that's not the right way to go about evaluating Search the Premises. This card is essentially another card that I can't remember that's in blue. Whatever. Everybody else will know what card I'm talking about. I just can't think of the name off the top of my head. But it gives you an artifact that you can either A, sacrifice for any artifact-based shenanigans that you're doing, which, like I said, we just had a whole lore hold pre-con that was based on artifacts. So go nuts with that, I suppose, if you want. Or the way I interpret this is literally just straight up white card draw.
Yeah.
Like, if people want to attack you, that's fine. White has actually a decent amount of ways to deal with attacking and gaining life and such, so you don't mind the attacking. And you get to make clues. Not to mention that this is whenever a creature attacks you. So I'm pretty sure that this actually triggers for each creature that attacks you. It doesn't say whenever 1 or more creatures attack you, right? This one is actually for each creature. So if 3 creatures attack you, you investigate 3 times. And I really just feel like this card is a very, very good white card draw card. And I look forward personally to playing this in pretty much every white deck that I possess.
And I'll swing at you every single time. Because I'm just that kind of guy. If me attacking you is going to help you a little bit, I'll do it. Why not? It'll be politically okay. Because then I'll be like, hey, remember that time I gave you all those treasures? Oh, sorry, all those clues you could sacrifice for things? Yeah, now it's my turn. So with that, let's move on to blue. So we have 6 cards in blue. We're going to start off with, I want to say it's probably my favorite card in blue. It's Dress Down. So it's 1 and a blue for an enchantment that has flash. That says when Dress Down enters the battlefield, draw a card. Creatures lose all abilities. At the beginning of the end step, sacrifice Dress Down.
All right. So my primary line of thought with Dress Down was this is finally an answer to Thassa's Oracle.
Yeah,
and
that was my first thought too. Thoracle just needs a way to be like countered that isn't just countering the spell, like countering either the spell or the demonic consultation / pact.
And at worst, it cantrips. It does sacrifice itself at the beginning of the end step, but there are ways to get stuff out of your graveyard. You know, like you have Sun Titan can get it back. It's got flash, so when people cast Thassa's Oracle, you just cast this in response. But also, since it cantrips, it's like just a hoser that you can just play in blue, right? Mm-hmm. Like, everybody knows how much I love my Mare Soul. If somebody played this against me, I would cry. Because, well, I mean, I would cry until the end of the turn. But if somebody cast it in response, then I wouldn't get my ETB. And that sucks for me, because I kind of count on that. And by count on that, I mean I literally can't do anything without it. This helps nerf, like, a Zur deck that's trying to tutor enchantments. You just cast this before combat. And then the Zur now can't tutor an enchantment when it attacks. Worst case scenario, if you're like dead to flyers, Dress Down can get rid of flying, so you can just block flyers. It gets rid of Death Touch. If a Locust God deck is about to swing out with all its hasty bugs that it just made, Dress Down gets rid of the haste on the creatures, so they can't attack. There are a lot of applications for this card. There's like a surprising amount for a cantripping 2-drop enchantment.
Yeah, if you kind of combo this with Sundial of the Infinite, you can keep this around for as long as you want to be able to get, keep paying for that end step trigger.
Worth noting that actually that wouldn't actually work because this says at the beginning of the end step, which means that this would get sacrificed on your opponent's end step if you skip the trigger. Dang.
All right. As usual, don't listen to what I say. I try to do sneaky little shenanigans, but I should probably read the cards before I really, make suggestions on what are good cards that work together. Well, the next one we have on the list here is Inevitable Betrayal. It is a suspended sorcery, which means it doesn't have a mana cost, but it has suspend 3 for 1 blue. So, in case anybody here is unfamiliar with the suspend mechanic, it says rather than cast this card from your hand, you pay 1 blue and exile it with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. You may search target opponent's library for a creature card and put that card onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player shuffles.
So the reason why I have this card in here is because Bribery is a very popular card, not only in Commander, but in like Cube. And this is a delayed version of it that people can see coming, but also you can potentially just get it out for a little cheaper because you suspend it for 3 mana. And I don't know, it just feels like a fairer version of that card. And I'm all for making fairer versions of previously kind of unfun or broken cards. In particular, this one you can also cheat a little bit if you wanted to by cascading into it, which a lot of people have already talked about doing. I even have a friend of mine that's got a Yidris deck that he's shoving all of these suspend spells into. So if you were cheeky enough to do that, you could absolutely do that. I know As Foretold is a card that people are now picking up on because of these suspend spells. There are a few different ways to
As Foretold's price has spiked so much, even before this set was being previewed.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of that is artificial or if it's even like worth buying into. But again, this isn't a finance podcast, so I'm not going to talk about that.
Commander-at-Arms
but-
finances. How to practically put your money anywhere Magic exists.
But Inevitable Betrayal, fun, very good card, and I would play it in not every blue deck, but I would play it in a majority of blue decks. It's a cute little number.
I like it. It's really strong. And I don't like it because it's strong. I like it for what it does. But as I've seen on Twitter when this card was originally previewed, people are telling Wizards to stop printing cards that require you to go through other people's libraries while we can really only play online, and we're starting to trickle into like in-person play. They're like, why do you keep doing this, Wizards? And I mean, they didn't know we were going to have a pandemic when this set was probably created about 2 years ago now.
Yeah, they make their sets 2 years ahead of time. So
sometimes even more.
June 2019. I'm pretty sure like the pandemic had not yet reached, or like the virus had just started across like on the other side of the globe.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to our third card here is Rise and Shine. It is 1 and a blue for a sorcery that says target non-creature artifact you control becomes a 0/0 artifact creature. Put 4 +1/+1 counters on each artifact that became a creature this way, and it has an overload cost of 4 blue, which means you change the wording for target to each.
This is just straight up a finisher that artifact decks kind of needed, because honestly, the only real way artifact decks won previously was really through like combos. But this actually gives artifact decks just a straight up, hey, I'm going to punch you and I'm going to punch you really hard over and over again. Way to win a game. And I just think that's really cool.
I think this next one's really cool too. It's Scuttle Tide. It's 1 and a blue for an enchantment that has an activated ability of 1 and discard a card. Create a 0/3 blue crab creature token, and it has Delirium. Crabs you control get +1/+1 as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. Does this mean we're finally going to get like Crab Tribal?
I personally don't think so. The main reason why I find this card to be exciting is it is a discard outlet, so it is an outlet for both Madness and Graveyard Shenanigans that also makes you chump blockers. So this is just like an amazing mid-range card. It's really good on tempo because you get to get value off your discards in 2 ways, not just one. So like you discard a card that you want in the graveyard, and you also get to make a chump blocker, or you can make it into sacrifice fodder for like a Viscera Seer or something. The ceiling on this card is very high, and honestly, I think the floor, since it's a 2-drop enchantment, is rather high as well.
Yeah, it's definitely like up there. So the next one we have is Suspend. It is 1 blue instant that says exile target creature and put 2 time counters on it. If it doesn't have Suspend, it gains Suspend. So I've seen this card as being referred to as Swords to Timeshare, which I think is hilarious because I love that.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, I love it, man. Like, who needs Swords to Plowshares? We have Swords to Timeshares. I'll see you in 2 turns, baby.
Sure, that's kind of a fitting name. But I feel like giving it a nickname like that kind of limits its usefulness, right? Like when you call it Source to Timeshares, people are only going to see this as like opponent's creature removal, where really you can use this to save your own creature, and it just comes back later. And for those of you who don't know, when a creature is suspended, when you cast it off of suspend, it gains haste. So if you have like a combo piece but it requires haste, you can cast that combo piece and then suspend it, and then when it comes back, it'll have haste.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about it like that. It wasn't just like the only way to look at this is like comparing it to Swords to Plowshare or any other removal effect. I think it's a really cool card. I mean, like some of the most powerful cards in this set have Suspend on them, and if you can add Suspend to an opponent's creature if you need to, or an opponent's anything to get off the board if you need to, or if, like Paul said, you want to be able to flicker your own thing kind of thing. Like if you need to, I don't know, at worst you could flicker a Muldrifter and in 2 turns draw 2 cards, I guess.
You can also do it with the Incarnations if you should.
You can. So yeah, it's a really cool card. I think we'll see this maybe pop up in a couple of decks. It won't be like the big old Hail Mary and see it in every single blue deck, but I don't know, who knows. A lot of these cards are going to probably require a lot of testing, but we'll get there, and we'll probably have back a little bit of feedback on how these cards are performing in Commander. The last one we have here is actually a Merfolk Tribal Commander that I think is really cool. I'm going to butcher the name, and I apologize for that. Sevyellen, maybe?
Yeah, good enough.
Sevyellen of Sea and Sky. 1 blue, 3/4 legendary creature Merfolk God. Sevyellen of Sea and Sky has indestructible as long as you control at least 2 other Merfolk, which, I mean, you will. Whenever Sevyellen attacks, draw a card. Other Merfolk you control have Ward 1. So which means that if a spell or an ability an opponent controls targets a Merfolk you control, they have to pay 1, otherwise you counter that spell or ability.
Now, I know that this card obviously lends itself to a Merfolk strategy. I'm not spoiling anything for anybody by saying that. The card literally says Merfolk twice on it, including a third time in its pipeline. But I will point out that its attack text, whenever it attacks draw a card, is not tied to Merfolks at all. So I think this is actually just like, this is a 3-mana 3/4 that attacks the draw card.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would just play this in a blue deck. I wouldn't even like necessarily have to have Merfolk in my deck to play this card. Like, this is just a 3/4 that draws a card.
It's very well costed, I will say that. Like, usually you see 3-mana 3/3s with nothing, but it's a 3-mana 3/4. So it doesn't even die to bolt. Doesn't die to shock, doesn't die to lightning bolt, doesn't die to anything like that. I mean, if you incidentally have 2 other Merfolk, it becomes indestructible, which, I mean, in a Merfolk list you're going to, but if you're not in a dedicated Merfolk tribal deck, and like Paul said, you just play it in a regular blue deck, sometimes some of the cards that we play just have Merfolk on them. And I mean, it also gives other Merfolk Ward 1, so I mean, that's also
slam
really
this,
cool.
Slam this in your Changeling deck.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's actually a really good idea. And yeah, when it attacks, it draws a card. We saw Reconnaissance Mission be really good. That's the 2/2 blue enchantment that says whenever a creature you control attacks, draw a card, or whenever it deals combat damage. It's like the blue version of Aura Frostfang.
Yeah, except only for itself. But like, this triggering on attack is actually quite a big deal as opposed to dealing combat damage.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, if you really wanted to, and you were playing blue and white, you could use, like, Reconnaissance to take it out of combat, or you could use a Maze of Ith to take it out of combat if you just wanted to get the card draw trigger.
Yeah, don't limit this one to just Merfolk, people.
Yeah, don't sleep on it either. I think it's a really good card. We're going to move on to black now. So we have Archon of Cruelty. It is 6 and 2 black for a 6/6. Hoofed. That is a big cost for a 6/6. It has flying, but it says whenever Archon of Cruelty enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, discards a card, and loses 3 life, and you draw a card and you gain 3 life.
Yeah, this is kind of like the happy baby of Uro and Kroxa. It kind of does like a mishmash of the 2 effects of those cards. This does deserve to be 8 mana. You will not convince me otherwise. You could not tell me that this should have been a 6 mana 6/6 with that text.
If this was a 6 mana 6/6 with that text, it would be completely busted. I think at 8 mana, it's very, very well adjusted to be an 8 mana 6/6. This could even be like an 8 mana 5/5, and I'd be okay with it.
And let's be honest, you're not casting this for 8. You're getting this out of the graveyard for like 4 mana. So
Yeah.
you will get no pity from me. That being said, though, this is obviously an insane reanimation target because it cantrips itself, it gains a little bit of life, and also puts an opponent down on resources. Not only do they lose a creature or a planeswalker, but they also discard a card. So this is actually a net 4, technically speaking, because you get this card and draw a card, and an opponent discards the card and loses a creature. And that's a pretty big swing. To be stable to a single card.
Yeah, I like it. I just put together a Kroxa list, and if you go and check out the video I just made on the deck tech, you'll see that I may even be adding this one to that deck, so keep an ear out for that deck tech, you know? So the next one, we have is Chattering Augur. It is 1 and 1 black for a 1/1 skeleton shaman that says Chattering Augur can't attack. When Shattering Auger enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose 1 life, and it has an activated ability of 2 and 2 black. Return Shattering Auger from your graveyard to your hand.
Worth noting that it says it can't block now that it can't attack. A little bit of misphrasing there.
Yep. I have a habit of doing that, but yes, it cannot block. It can attack all you want, but it can't block.
Card advantage, repeatable. I mean, you just throw this in like a Lesher or something. Any sack outlet turns this thing into an absolute all-star. Yes, it's 4 mana to return it from your graveyard to your hand, and you still have to cast it, but that's an instant speed effect, and you can activate it just whenever you happen to have the spare mana to do so. Just a cheap cantripping creature in black, which is known for its reanimation. You can play this with like Gruesome Menagerie, I think, from Ravnica Allegiance. Again, I already mentioned Alesha. Even Merrin would like this card because it's extremely cheap on mana cost, which means that you can start reanimating this thing really early on. Goes well with Skull Clamp, Wink Wink. There's a lot about this card that just makes it an absolute all-star, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. Talking about all-star, what about the next card? It is Dorothy Voidwalker. It is black for a 3/2 rogue with Shadow. This is a keyword I haven't seen on a card in what seems to be forever. So Shadow basically says this creature can't block or be blocked by only creatures with Shadow. If a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it with a void counter on it, and has an activated ability to tap and sacrifice it. Choose an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. You may play it this turn without paying its mana cost.
This is a card that everybody has been talking about, and for good reason. This card, like, kind of does everything, right? It's most of the time unblockable. It is graveyard hate, and you also get to play the cards that get exiled with it if you just tap and sacrifice it. And the fact that it's sacrificed instead of exiling means that you get to recur this thing and do it multiple times in the game. Not only that, but since the cards that you exile have a unique counter on them, the next time that Dorothy Voidwalker enters the battlefield, you get to play those same cards, even though Dorothy Voidwalker, it's a different instance of Dorothy Voidwalker.
Yeah. It's not saying like it had to have been that version of it giving a void counter. It doesn't care. As long as it sees void counters on the field, you can still cast them.
Now, worth noting, you can also play lands off of Dorothy Voidwalker. Since it's only a 2-drop, if you're really land screwed and you need a land drop, you can just use this to get an extra land drop, perhaps. Something else that kind of makes this card awkward is that if somebody else is playing Dorothy Voidwalker, they get to play their opponent's cards with void counters on them as well. It does not say that it's exiled cards that you exiled with void counters. It's just an exiled card an opponent owns with a void counter on it. So, a little bit of awkwardness there. But still, very powerful, very cool card. You'll probably see this literally everywhere in every black deck ever. And for a good reason. It's a great card.
It is. The next one we have on the list here is Persist. So usually Persist is a keyword, but they made it into an actual Magic card. It does exactly the same thing. So it's 1 and a black for a sorcery that says return target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it.
Despite the fact that this card is like kind of plain, or it seems like very, I don't know, mundane. Reanimate effects this cheap don't come along that often, and having yet another one, even though it is non-legendary creatures only, is pretty nice to have, because previously we only really had like Reanimate. If you could cheat people out of having creature in their graveyard, you had Exhume, and most reanimation kind of falls around the 4 mana mark, usually a little higher than that. And having another cheap way to do it is just really, really cool. And we already mentioned Archon of Cruelty. That one's not legendary. Dorothy Voidwalker is not legendary. There's a lot, like not even just in this set, but there's a lot in this set that you would want to get with Persist.
Yeah, you could also just like turn 1 Entomb Archon of Cruelty to the graveyard, and then turn 2 Persist it back. So then you're getting a 5/5 flyer on turn 2.
And you draw
that's
a card.
crazy. And you draw a card. And you make your opponents go down cards and creatures. So pretty good there. Pretty good. We have Profane Tutor, which is the next card on the list here. It is a sorcery with Suspend 2 for 1 and a black. It says search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle.
I've heard a lot of people calling this card bad, and like I get where you're coming from, but I already said this, but I really like when they take older broken cards and make more fair versions of them. Profane Tutor, it's Demonic Tutor in 2 turns, which means that you're kind of advertising to everybody like, hey, in a couple turns I'm going to search through my deck for whatever card I want. But what's cool about that is since your opponents know it's coming, they can kind of prepare, so it's not as like unfair as Demonic Tutor was.
Yeah.
But also, in a good way, Profane Tutor lets you see how the board state changes over time. And the card that you tutor may or may not change depending on what the board state is in 2 turns. So, there's a good and a bad side to it, kind of a double-edged sword of sorts. And for that reason, this card gets my pick for one of the better black cards in this set.
I mean, my thing is how many times do people just go and tutor for their combo pieces? Like, if you're playing in the higher tier of like Magic / EDH / whatever, they're going and getting combo pieces or pieces to win the game. This card lets you, like, as Paul said, see how the game kind of progresses. Because in 2 turns, a lot can happen. And the tempo of a game can swing. Also, like, whoever's in the lead can swing as well. So you might be able to, like, in 2 turns, kind of see what you want to get. And it may be different to what you originally thought you were going to go and get if you had casted Demonic Tutor instead. But the last card we have here in the black category is Sudden Edict. It is 1 and a black for an instant with Split Second. And Split Second says, as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities, and it says target player sacrifices a creature.
So this is just power creeping Diabolic Edict, which is the same thing but without Split Second, for anybody that was curious. But besides that, this having Split Second means that it has a lot of unique applications. First of all, it really hoses Voltron decks. Like, really hoses them, because they can't, like, counter it. They can't respond by using something to, like, blink their commander or whatever, or, exile till the end of the turn. But also, like, say somebody's trying to exile your creature, but you don't want it to be exiled, you can Sudden Edict yourself and make sure that creature goes to the graveyard. I mean, that's not the ideal situation, but it is a possibility. And, yeah, this might be an edict that like actually sees play, literally just because of that one mechanic on it. I'm curious, though, to see if that actually comes true.
I mean, Split Second's pretty dang powerful, honestly. So we are going to pass through to our combat phase. We're going to do as much damage as we can, hopefully kill our opponents, but if we don't, we're going to come back for our main phase too. We're going to go and hear a message from our sponsors right now. Welcome back from that ad break. We didn't manage to kill all of our opponents, but we are going to come back for a main phase 2 where we can cast more spells. And those spells are going to be red ones because we still have 2 more colors to go and then some little spicy things at the end. So we're going to come back and we're going to start talking about the red cards. So we have 6 of them again. We have Chef's Kiss, which is our first one. It is 1 red for an instant that says gain control of target spell that targets only a single permanent or player, copy it, then reselect the targets at random for the new spell and the copy. The new targets can't be you or a permanent you control.
This is more or less an actual red counterspell, but only for other counterspells. It's a particularly fun little thing. If you have removal, then the removal automatically targets, or well, when you cast this, it targets an opponent's permanent at random. The fact that it can't target you or permanent you control is pretty cool, because it's not typically a line of text that you'd see on a red card like this. Usually chaos is just that, absolute pure chaos. But this one is controlled chaos. For all you Sonic fans out there, chaos control probably rings a bell. I know that was a meme for some time. I don't know if it still is. But Chef's Kiss, honestly, it gets my Chef's Kiss. It's a very cool red card and probably sees play in a lot more decks than you think it does.
Chef's Kiss, eh? The next card is Dragon's Rage Channeler. It is 1 red for a 1/1 human wizard. Sorry, human shaman, not a wizard. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, surveil 1. So, just in case not everyone here is familiar with surveil, it means to look at the top card of your library, you may put that card into your graveyard. So it's kind of like scrying, but instead of scrying to the bottom of your library, you scry it to the graveyard. It also has Delirium, so as long as there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, Dragon's Rage Channeler gets +2/+2, has flying, and attacks each combat if able.
Alright, that Delirium part, forget about that. We don't worry about that. I mean, it's good for draft, but for our purposes, that first line of text, casting a non-creature spell, surveilling one, that is money.
Oh yeah.
Cash money. That is a slam dunk. You know why? Because we just had all these decks, all these Magecraft decks, these Magecraft cards that care about casting spells. And here comes another card that now lets us actually like fix the top card of our deck and kind of let our Magecraft engine keep going and going and going. Also triggers off of artifacts and enchantments, which is noteworthy. It's not exactly the same as Magecraft, which means that you probably just, get coincidental value no matter where you play this card, because every deck plays artifacts and enchantments. You play a Soul Ring, you get to surveil one. You play an Arcane Signet, you get to surveil one. And just wow, what an incredibly powerful 1-drop.
There's a lot of powerful 1-drops. Actually, looking at the list while you were talking, a lot of these from Red are like 1, 2, and 3 drops. So Chef's Kiss
was actually the most expensive one.
Yeah, it was. This was the second most expensive card. Sorry, this was the one of the 1-drops. The next card is the next expensive card. Sorry, it is Faithless Salvaging. It is 1 and a red for an instant that says discard a card, then draw a card. Has Rebound. So Rebound is a keyword that means if you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves at the beginning of your next upkeep. You may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost.
Obviously, a nod to Faithless Looting.
Yep.
May it rest in peace in Modern. We still get to play it though, because Commander's awesome. This is just a instant speed version of it that you pay for twice basically, because it's 2 mana. But the instances of discarding and drawing happen separately. Really, it's just a second copy of Faithless Looting. But instead of discarding 2 cards at the same time, or instead of drawing 2 cards at the same time, you get to discard on separate occasions. Which, there are some benefits to that and some benefits to Faithless Looting. But really, I think you just run them both. Really cool card. Having Rebound means that it also counts twice as casting it for all you Magecraft lovers out there. Important because, Strixhaven was pretty recent. And I know people are still working on those Magecraft decks, myself included. And this one probably hits a nice little spot there.
Are you going to play this card, Paul, in your...
Honestly, probably.
Yeah?
Probably, yeah.
It's actually not bad. I like it. I like it a lot. I have been putting I've been putting together a lot of like discarding kind of drawing decks lately. Like Daretti, my mono red artifact deck, likes to discard cards and draw cards. So does Croxer. But anyway, that's a whole different topic for a whole different day. The next card we have is Flame Blitz. It is a 1 red mana enchantment that says at the beginning of your end step, Flame Blitz deals 5 damage to each Planeswalker and has cycling for 2.
I have talked about this card a lot amongst friends, and it is very well known how I feel about this card, and I think that Flame Blitz sets a very dangerous precedent for what a hate card should look like. It is efficiently costed, it is 1 mana, it's an enchantment, so it stays on the field at the beginning of your end step, so it immediately gets value. Like, you just pass her, you go to the end of your turn, and immediately starts doing its thing. It deals 5 damage to each Planeswalker, which is enough to kill most Planeswalkers, or at least severely cripple them. And if you don't need it, you can just cycle it away. There is no reason to not play this card, honestly speaking, other than the fact that you just, don't want to play it. But since it has cycling, like, at worst, if you don't need it, you just draw a card off of it. And that part is what sets a very dangerous precedent here. And I honestly hope we do not see more Hoser cards like this, because this is too efficient for what it does.
Yeah. I think we're going to see it in a lot of red decks. I was thinking about it. It does it to each Planeswalker, so it includes your own Planeswalkers. So if you are playing with any Planeswalkers and you kind of don't need it, you would just cycle it away. I wouldn't be playing it in Daretti maybe as much. But I mean, if you're versing Super Friends, this would be really good against Super Friends. The next card we have on the list is Ragavan Nimble Pilferer. It is a 1 red, 2/1 legendary creature, Monkey Pirate, that says whenever Ragavan Nimble Pilferer deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn, you may cast that card. Also has dash for 1 and a red. So dash means that you can cast this spell for its dash cost. If you do, it gains haste and is returned from the battlefield to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step.
This card has certainly made its rounds around the internet, and for good reason. This is just one of the best red cards they've ever printed, to be honest. Popular in Commander, will likely see actual Modern play as well. Unconfirmed on older formats than that, but it's just a really good red card. This reminds me a lot of Mono Red Grenzo, except more of a like a one-time thing. Since Grenzo does it for each creature that deals combat damage.
Yeah.
And I love Grenzo, so ergo I love Ragavan. I'm hoping that the price on this card comes down quite a bit, like really substantially, because it's ridiculous right now, and I really want one.
Yeah, it's currently pre-ordering for about $72 on TCG Player, which is not where we want to see this card. I'd rather, like, we always say don't buy boxes, buy singles. That's seeming to be the opposite with Modern Horizons 2. It's seeming to be like the pre-order prices are ridiculously high right now. So the last card we have here in red is Strike It Rich. It is a 1-mana sorcery that says create a treasure token and has flashback for 2 and a red.
This card seems like really plain Jane, but I'm going to mention this again. Strixhaven just came out. There's a lot of Magecraft decks out there. This card is literally free the first time you cast it, and then you can flash it back later for another sorcery cast. This is just the Magecraft card, right? It's literally free the first time you cast it. Also good for Storm decks. Again, it is free the first time you cast it. At worst, it acts as kind of mana filtering because it only costs 1 red and it makes you a treasure, which makes a mana of any color. But it really stands out in those Magecraft and Storm decks. Wild Canter was already a card that saw play, and a lot of people have been talking about this replacing that card in Storm decks. This is for Modern in particular. But for Commander, like, you just get to play a free sorcery and then flash it back later. For example, with Faerun, if you just need to get another Magecraft trigger. Really cool card.
Yeah, I really like it. Filtering in red seems really good, especially making the treasure. And there is another card in the set as well that we're not going to talk about right now because we will talk about it very soon, that kind of really works with that card. And if anybody else has seen the set, they kind of know what I'm talking about. But we're going to move on to green now, and this is one of our last colors we're going to talk about today. We're going to start off with Fey Offering. It is 2 and a green for an enchantment that says at the beginning of each end step, if you've cast both a creature spell and a non-creature spell this turn, create a clue token, a food token, and a treasure token. Now, I don't normally point out flavor text either, but as Paul was discussing what he was talking about Strike It Rich, I was just having a bit of a peek at this flavor text, and it's from Tulane, Teller of Tales. It's pretty damn cool. This is beware the gift when you don't know who the giver. So,
this condition is surprisingly, or perhaps unsurprisingly, easy to fulfill in Commander. We cast non-creature and creature spells all the time. This happens at least 4 or 5 times in like a 10-turn game. So the fact that you get to not only get a token that draws a card, get a token that makes mana, and get a token that gains you life if you need it is quite incredible. On a 3-mana enchantment, so it can happen more than once. And it's at the beginning of each end step. So if you somehow manage to do it on an opponent's turn, you get those 3 things again. Not to mention that if you're casting Fey Offering with another creature that turn, it itself counts as the non-creature spell. So kind of cheeky thing there that you can do. Great card, lots of value. I will play this in several decks myself. And I look forward to gaining value.
Yeah. And the way to get rid of that stuff is with the next card. So Foundation Breaker is our next one. It is 3 and a green. For a 2/2 elemental that says when Foundation Breaker enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment and has evoke for 1 and a green.
So it's just a naturalize when you evoke it. But because it's a creature, that means that things like Mercil really like it because you get to get them back. The evoke means it's a free sacrifice, so Marisol especially likes that. Muldrotha loves it because you can play evoke out of the graveyard. It's an elemental, so it has a relevant creature type. There are elemental strategies out there. For example, the 3-color Omnath, Locus of the Royal, I think is the 3-mana or the 3-color one. Really enjoys this card. This goes in Yarok pretty well. Yarok, sorry, I don't know why I pronounced it like that. Really cool card. It's very weird to me how stapling an older unplayable card onto a creature, no matter how small a creature is, makes it somehow playable again. Because nobody plays Naturalize, but people will play this card.
Yeah, because it's connected to, like, it's got legs, right? That's what it says whenever it's on a creature, it's got legs. So the next one we have is Gaia's Will. If anyone's familiar with Yawgmoth's Will from way back in the day, they'll be a little familiar with this one. It's a sorcery for suspend 4 for 1 green mana. And says, until end of turn, you may play lands and cast spells from your graveyard. If a card would be put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, exile that card instead.
So this is literally just a green Yawgmoth's Will. Yawgmoth's Will is worded a little differently on the card because it is an older card, so I think it just says you can play cards from your graveyard this turn. But this is just what Yawgmoth's Will would look like if it was printed today, which it can't be, so don't get your hopes up.
So we got Gaia's Will instead, which is still pretty cool.
Yeah. So you pay a green, you suspend this, and in 4 turns you get to do a whole bunch of stuff with your graveyard, or you can cheat this out, like I said, with As Foretold, or any of the aforementioned ways, like Cascade, that I mentioned before. Yawgmoth's Will is a powerful card. Gaia's Will, despite being a suspend card, I promise you, will be a powerful card as well. Mainly, you get 4 turns that you can set up for it. Yes, opponents also get to set up for it happening, but you do get 4 turns to set up for it. You know, kind of fill up your graveyard, maybe set up a sack outlet so you can start doing stuff with that. And, I mean, at worst, like, maybe you get a fetch line out of your graveyard and that's it. No matter what, I just think that this card is great. I think it will see play. Maybe not as much as I think it does, but it is definitely a great card.
Yeah, I really like it as well. Moving on, we have Sylvan Anthem. It is green for an enchantment that says green creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever a green creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1.
This does not say... First of all, this should have been white. I'm just going to put it out there. But we're living in the modern world where this is green. A 2-mana Anthem is kind of nuts. Not going to lie. That is dangerous. White actually did previously have one. It is now banned. It was called Crusade. It was 2 white mana, all white creatures. That includes your opponents. Get +1/+1. And this is just the same thing, except only your creatures, your green creatures. And whenever your green creatures ETB, you get to scry 1. So it's literally just the one that white had, but better. And if that's not White's experience in Magic in a nutshell, I don't know what is.
It's 100% White's experience in Magic. Like, anything that they get gets banned, and we just get, like, color pie shifted versions of them, which is it's nutty, man. Honestly, like, I don't know why they keep doing this. Like, just give us that's the thing is, if White had if you take all the white cards off the banned list, I reckon White would be probably like maybe the second strongest card in Commander.
I don't know about that. They still don't have card draw, but it would definitely be in a better place than it is now.
I mean, they don't have card draw, but they have ways to disrupt your opponent's boards and pull them back to where you are. So, like, if they do get out of hand, you just say, "Nuh-uh, no way, you're coming back here. We're gonna balance this, and we're gonna cast balance." You know, like, you want your commander on the field? Nuh-uh, I'm gonna Krakus it, and it's gonna go back to your hand. See you later. You know, it has all these really, like, these small incremental ways to gain value that people don't think about because it doesn't say draw a card on it. Yeah, draw a card is powerful, but if your opponents are ahead and White has ways to stop you from getting ahead, or like once you are ahead to stop you and pull you back to where you are, then that doesn't matter. You've basically, like, 6 for 1 to them. You've gotten their lands off the battlefield. They've cast spells to go and ramp themselves and everything. And yeah, I see it as, like, White needs some of those powerful effects on the ban list to kind of really become the power, like the color that, like the powerful color that we want it to be.
All right, that's a different episode.
That is a whole different episode.
We're talking about Sylvan Anthem here.
Little sprinkle in there.
So if you're looking for a place that this card goes, honestly, I have 2 decks that would play this. It goes pretty well in Girid because if you'll notice, the second line of text does not say a non-token green creature. It's just a green creature, and Girid's Rhinos happen to be green. So
also,
not
Girid
only will they get buffed
green.
by this, Girid is also green, yes. But you get to constantly scry at least one each turn with Girid because you're making another green Rhino over and over and over
you
again.
get this makes you have 5/5 Rhinos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, I really need to put my Girid deck back together now. Another good reason to put Girid back together. 5/5 Rhinos and a 3/6 Girid. Oh, run at me.
Yarok also makes this trigger twice, I believe, because I'm pretty sure he says if something ETBing triggers a permanent you control. So I'm pretty sure Yarok would let you scry one twice.
Yeah.
I have a mono green Druids deck that would absolutely love this card. Yeah,
yes, Seton would love this. Maybe take out the was it Hall of Gemstones for this?
No.
Yes.
Absolutely not.
Yes. I think you should.
But this being 2 mana makes it extremely playable in a very wide variety of places. And the fact that it's not just an Anthem makes it all the more playable in that regard.
Fair. All right, let's move on to the next one, Paul. We have Timeless Witness. It is 2 and 2 green for a 2/1 human shaman. It says when Timeless Witness enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand and has Eternalize for 5 green, which means that you can exile this card from your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie human shaman with no mana cost, Eternalize only as a sorcery.
This is a lot of people are quick to compare this to Eternal Witness, which is obviously the card that it's trying to mimic. It even has, half of its name is Witness.
It's also a human shaman, which so is Eternal Witness.
And also Timeless is kind of like Eternal, right?
Yeah.
So cute little nod there. But I think the better card to compare this to is actually a card that I can't remember the name of. James, help me out. 6 mana card. It's a 5/4 from Battle for Zendikar.
Greenwater Marasa?
There you go. That's the one. Greenwater Marasa. Mainly because that card is very expensive and also gets 2 cards back. So it's 6 mana. When it ETBs, you get a card back. And when it dies, you can exile it and get a card back. Timeless Witness, very similar, except you just pay less on the front end and more on the back end. This card, I think, is actually really, really good. People pay 3 mana for Eternal Witness all the time. I think paying 1 more for the same exact effect is not that big a deal, and being able to do it twice in one game, if you eventually get to the point where you have 7 mana and you really need to do it, is just, adding more butter to the popcorn, so to speak.
Yeah, this is, for us as Commander players, this is just another redundant effect of Eternal Witness, which is still pretty huge. Because if they get rid of your Eternal Witness, then what are you going to do? If you can't, if you have a thing you need to do with, or a combo, or an interaction, you got Timeless Witness as a backup. I really, really like this card. I'm not sure if I want to pay, 7 mana to Eternalize this. Maybe I would. It is instant speed. You're in green. Green like to have a super abundance amount of mana, and I guess having a lot of mana sinks would be a decent thing in green.
It's Eternalizing is only a sorcery.
That's very true. Again, don't listen to James. He can't read cards. I think we've learnt this now, is James can't read cards properly.
I can't wait for you to listen back to this episode and hear yourself reading that text when you were explaining Eternalize.
Yeah. Look, all right. I'm not the greatest of co-hosts. All right, and enough of how much I can't read. Let's move on to the next one that I'm not going to get wrong this time. It is Tireless Provisioner. It is 2 and a green for a 3/2 Elf Scout with Landfall. So whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food token or a treasure token.
All right, so this card obviously is it's a Tireless Tracker, or it's based off Tireless Tracker, but there's a theme in this set of making a food, a clue, and a treasure, and this makes the 2 that Tireless Tracker doesn't. So cool nod there. pairs well, obviously, with certain other cards in the set that we haven't spoken about yet, but we will. And I think getting more mana for your mana is something that green very much is known for. So, like, this is basically, I would compare it to Lotus Cobra, except you get to save the mana for later, right? Because you make the treasure token, and you don't have to spend it in that one turn. You just get to save it if you need it. Or if you're running low on life, you get to just pop food tokens. If you're in like green-white with Nykthos Paragon, you'd probably want to do that. Very versatile card. I feel like I've actually theory crafted something similar to this before.
Yeah, I think you may have.
It might have been when I made up a D&D set card. I think I made something similar to this. So kind of cool to see something similar to that in print, because I actually really like the design, and I obviously really like this card as well.
Yeah, now we were going to talk about the multicolored cards next, but I think we're going to go to the colorless cards, because there's a card I really want to talk about that kind of work with a card from the green that we just talked about, the Tireless Provisioner, as well as the mono red card Strike It Rich. So if we just move over to the colorless cards now, we can talk about Academy Manufacturer. It is a 3-mana artifact creature assembly worker. It's a 1/3. If you would create a food, clue, or treasure token, create one of each instead.
Newer players might think that this goes infinite with itself, because it says if you would create a clue, a food, or a treasure, instead create one of each, which means that since you're creating one of those, you would again create one of each. But since it says instead create, this is a replacement effect, and replacement effects can only happen once per instance. So this would just replace the first instance of creating one of those with each of them instead.
Yes, which is a good way to explain it.
Obviously goes very well with the Tireless Provisioner that we just talked about. Goes very well with Search the Premises, for anybody out there that was paying attention. Goes very well with another card that I am trying to find, because I know I mentioned it earlier, and I can't remember what it was. No, Fey Offering. There we go. Goes well with Fey Offering. Goes well with Strike It Rich, I think James was hinting at before.
Yeah. I even said Strike It Rich. I even said the card name.
Goes well with Ragavan. There are so many cards we have now that just coincidentally make one of those tokens that playing this means is just straight up value. And honestly, I feel like people are really not going to be tempted to remove this thing, because like, oh, it's just a 3-mana 1/3. What's the worst that happens? Like, they get a clue and instead they get to gain 3 life and get a mana as well. Whatever, I don't care.
Now, my first thought when I saw this card was, what if you play this and then play, say, I don't know, an innocuous 1 and 1 red goblin, I think it is, from some Commander product. It's just this super like card. It's just this card that no one really plays. Dockside Extortionist. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I mean, it's okay. Would this mean that, like, for each treasure that you create off Dockside Extortionist, you create a clue and a food token?
Yeah, that works.
If you make 7 treasures, you're going to make 7 clues and 7 food.
Yeah, that definitely works. How reliable that combo is, I'm not sure, but obviously that is pretty potent to make 21 tokens instead of 7, especially if you're in an artifact deck that particularly likes to have artifacts just hanging around doing nothing.
Oh, hi, Duretti. I want to switch out my food tokens for my more powerful combo pieces in Duretti. I think I'm going to add Academy Manufacturer to that deck, just so I can like try to get the that little interaction happening. At least, even if I can get it once, I'll be happy. If I can get it once and it does what I want it to do, I'll be like, hell yeah, that's awesome. Now let's take it out of the deck because it's probably bad. So the next one we have on the list here is Dermo Taxi. It is a 2-mana artifact vehicle that is a 0/0 but has imprint, which means as Dermo Taxi enters the battlefield, exile a creature card from a graveyard. Tap 2 untapped creatures you control until end of turn. Dermo Taxi becomes a copy of the imprinted card, except it's a vehicle artifact in addition to its other types.
This is a vehicle that does not have crew, which is like kind of weird. It technically has crew, but it doesn't have the keyword crew, like the mechanic. I don't know, kind of weird to me. But this is a colorless clone Specifically, it's very similar to Body Double. It's basically just a colorless body double, but you get to like yoink other people's creatures if they have some spicy stuff in their graveyard, like Sun Titan, if they have it in their graveyard. Any of the incarnations we talked about, you can copy those, even though they don't really do anything on attack. You get to have their keywords. You get to copy somebody's. I already mentioned like if they have like a tireless tracker, because it does become a copy until the end of the turn. The possibilities are really endless with this card, and I haven't seen anybody talk about this card really, but it seems incredible because it's graveyard hate and also gets to copy that creature. I don't know. It just seems like kind of the nuts to me.
Yeah, I mean, you could have it coming out as a copy of Emrakul. I mean, you wouldn't get its cast ability, but still, you could have this thing coming out as a copy of any of the Eldrazi's.
Well, the older ones shuffle back into the deck, right?
I mean, that's also very fair, but you could get the new ones.
The newer ones, though, you could definitely get those in.
Let's move on to Liquid Metal Talk. It is a 2-mana artifact rock, so it taps for a colorless. It also has another activated ability to tap and target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. This is liquid metal coating and I don't know.
Mindstone. I don't know.
I was gonna say Mindstone. I couldn't get my head out of Felwar Stone, but that's completely different. It doesn't tap for colorless. Yeah, so it's Mindstone and liquid metal coating smashed into one. These are two cards that I have in Daretti that one of them's going to come out, and I'm going to put this instead, which I think I'm going to take out the liquid metal coating, and I'm going to put liquid metal torque in instead, because it's massive.
It's worth noting that liquid metal torque can't make lands into artifacts, which is noteworthy. Liquid metal coating can. But the main reason why I have this on here is because it is a 2-mana rock, which, you know, we can't get enough of those, and also comes into play untapped, and has an additional effect to it, which may or may not be relevant at times, but regardless of whether or not it is, it's a 2-mana artifact. 2-mana mana rock that has additional potential upside, which is not something we see too often. Like Arcane Signet was a good card, obviously, and didn't even have an additional effect. It just taps for a mana of any color. This tapping for color was obviously is a little different, but having another line of text, like another effect it can do later on in the game, means that it's not usually that dead of a draw later on.
Yeah, speaking of Arcane Signet, we got another 2-mana mana rock. But in this way, it's not, I guess, a rock, it's more of a dork. But we got Ornithopter of Paradise. So this is a mashup between Ornithopter, the 0-drop artifact Thopter, and Birds of Paradise, the 1 green mana 0/1, I believe it is, flying bird dork. Put those together, you get Ornithopter of Paradise, 2 mana for a 0/2 artifact creature Thopter with flying, and says tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool.
I'm actually glad you compared this to Arcane Signet, because a lot of people are saying that this card is not that good, because like, why would you play Ornithopter of Paradise when you can just play Birds of Paradise? And to that I say, not every deck is green. And also, like, sometimes maybe you'll be color screwed and you really just need a colorless way to make mana. So comparing this to Arcane Signet, I think is the right call. And any madmen out there that are saying that this card should have been 1 mana, I will have you know that this card would have been extremely expensive if it was 1 mana, because it would be played literally everywhere. Anywhere, anytime.
I mean, there's no reason,
it'll see a lot of play.
There's no reason for this not to be played everywhere, honestly. Like it's a 2 mana of any color that then you can get 1 color out of. I love this card, man. Like, yeah, okay, it has its down. Like, if turn 2, if you didn't have anything to go into for 1 mana, you would play this. But if you did, you'd play Arcane Signet. But if you only had this or the other, I mean, either of them are fantastic on turn 1 or turn 2. You know, you can, instead of signeting off a Sol Ring on turn 1, you can Ornithopter of Paradise and then untap with the same amount of mana, unless you had like a way of, 1 mana. So like play a land, Sol Ring, Signet, Exploration, play a second land, say pass. I mean, in that instance, then Arcane Signet is better. But in decks that can't play green, this is still another fantastic 2 mana. Essentially, it's a mana rock, but it's a mana dork. So I love this card. This card should be a little bit more than $1.19 currently at its pre-order price. But yeah, I mean, I can't sing its praise anymore, damn it. Don't sleep. Don't sleep on this card.
I would even play this in Elishnorn. Like, it becomes a 2/4 flyer later that ramps me into Elishnorn. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, it's a great card, and especially at common. Like, this is a nice addition that I am thankful for.
I'd be picking up a couple of copies of this card just in case it does spike in the future. But anyway, we're gonna move on to our second last colors card here. It is Sword of Hearth and Home. It is a brand new sword card, so I assume they're going to do some sort of new sword cycle later on down the track, because last time we got 2, this time we're only getting 1. But it is 3 mana for an artifact equipment that says equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has protection from green and from white. And whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card. Put both cards onto the battlefield under your control, then shuffle, and has equipped 2.
You've probably already seen this card. It has been quite the talk of the town. You get to blink things. Not only do you get to blink your creatures, but also you get to take things back that were stolen from you, because it is exiling the creature that you own, not that you control. And you also get to ramp a little bit. And given that Sword of the Animist already sees a lot of play, the fact that this does the same thing with more, and everybody loves that word more, means that obviously this card is going to be quite the heavy hitter. And it has protection from white, which is very relevant. Protection from green, maybe not so much, but protection from white is kind of a big deal. Dodges a lot of popular removal. And yeah, I guess that's really all there is to say about this card, because the rest of it is pretty obvious, honestly.
All right, cool. Moving on. The last card is Urza's Saga. We did talk about this on our previous episode. Paul, did you have anything else you wanted to say about it at all?
No, this card is so good in my eyes that I couldn't not put it here. I'm not going to talk about it again because, like you said, we already talked about this on our episode. I think it was a couple weeks ago now. So there's not much that's developed since then that I can say about it.
Okay.
So just insert comments from last episode, or from a couple episodes ago here.
Yeah, go check out that episode. It's still a really cool episode. I believe it was called "Should We Be Excited for These?" or "Which ones should we be excited for?" Because we broke down the new cards that we were getting the preview season. We got a couple cards from this and a couple cards from the new Dungeons and Dragons Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. Go listen to that one, and then come back and tell us what you think of Urza's Saga. So we're going to move into our last 6 cards here for the episode, and then we'll get out of your ear holes. I'm going to start off with Dakkon Shadow Slayer. So Dakkon Shadow Slayer is Esper colors, so it is white, blue, and black. For a legendary planeswalker, that is a zero loyalty legendary planeswalker, that says Dakkon Shadow Slayer enters the battlefield with a number of loyalty counters on him equal to the number of lands you control. He has 3 activated abilities. The first one is +1 Surveil 2, -3 exile target creature, and -6 you may put a artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield.
I think that this is one of the most fair planeswalkers they have printed in quite some time. It really is not that powerful, but it's like just powerful enough, especially at 3 mana, that you would play this card. It gets a lot of coincidental value off its -6, sure, because everybody plays Mana Rocks. I'm sure, there's other artifacts that you play that you'd want to cheat out. But it's also not necessarily card advantage, but it does see 2 cards at a time with the Surveil, and it can fill your graveyard if you need to do that. But it's also repeatable removal. -3 to exile target creature means that if you cast this on curve, it literally just exiles a creature. If you're casting this even later, it scales with your land, so you could potentially do it twice, maybe even 3 times, 4 times even. So just a really great, balanced planeswalker. And I know it's weird saying that about a 3-mana planeswalker because they're generally considered very powerful. But
like Oko, he is pretty powerful.
Yeah. But I'm actually confident in saying that this card is very balanced, and I actually hope that we see more planeswalkers like this one.
Yeah. Moving on, we have Dam. So just reading this and kind of thinking in my head, I'm like, oh man, this is not only just target removal, but it's also a board wipe. So Dam is a black sorcery that says destroy target creature A creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated and has overload for 2 and 2 white, which means, again, you replace all instances of target with each. So this is, at worst, a single target removal, but it's also like Wrath of God or any other 4-mana board wipe, or 4-mana white board wipe. If, like, I want them to keep doing this kind of thing for all board wipes. Just, attack on either single target or a full sweeper.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and honestly, like, there are times, and, everybody does this, I've even done it myself, where you cast a board wipe to kill one creature, and it feels bad because you just paid 4 mana to kill one creature, and you can't do anything else. Or 5 mana, whatever it is. And Damn literally gives you the option of just casting this for cheaper just to kill that one creature, and maybe you can do something else on that turn. Very versatile card, and we all know how I feel about, versatile cards.
Especially in Commander. Like, it's not only just, like, your personal preference on this. Like, this isn't just a personal preference card. This is just a fantastic modal card, essentially. Like, you want to kill one thing, pay 2 mana. You want to kill the whole board, pay 4 mana. I really wish they print more of these cards in more color combinations than just Orzhov.
Not to mention that, like, you can have a funny moment where you just release a big sigh and you say, damn. And somebody's like, yeah, I know, this is pretty bad. And then you're like, no, really, damn, I'm going to cast
it. Let me just overload a damn real quick. All right, speaking about a card we might want to remove very quickly is Garth One-Eyed. So this was a card that kind of stirred a lot of emotions in the community. So it is a 5-color commander, so it's Wooburg, 1 of each color, for a 5/5 legendary creature human wizard that has an activated ability of choose a card name that hasn't been chosen from among Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Shivan Dragon, Regrowth, and Black Lotus. Create a copy of the card with the chosen name. You may cast the copy. You still pay its mana cost.
All right. There's a decent amount to unpack about this card.
This does everything, though, right?
It does everything. So a lot of people. First things first. A lot of people that I have been talking to and that Jane's have been talking to. The general consensus is that it lets you play a banned card, so it should be banned. And I'm gonna point out, and this is the only thing I'll say about this, that there's a big difference between Black Lotus being 0 mana and being 5 mana. Big difference.
Yeah.
With the obvious out of the way. One thing I don't like about this card is the fact that it does not explain, mainly because it doesn't have room, what these cards do. These are all cards from like Magic's first set, Alpha, and newer players probably don't know what Shivan Dragon does, or what Terror does, or Brain Geyser. They might know what Disenchant does, they might know what Regrowth does, they might know what Black Lotus does, just because of how popular it is, but I think it's kind of poor to not have some kind of reference. Maybe there's a card, like a checklist card in the set that explains what they do. That would be cool. But as of right now, since we don't have confirmation on that, kind of have to assume that there's nothing to reference for that. And I think that's kind of poor.
So I guess just for our viewers who aren't really familiar with any of these cards, do you just want to break them down real quick of what they do?
Yeah, so Disenchant is 1 and a white. For an instant that says destroy target artifact or enchantment. Brain Geyser is 2 blue and X for, I believe, a sorcery that says target player draws X cards, I believe. Or no, I think it just says draw X cards. Sorry.
No,
I've been playing Magic for like 8 years, and notice that or 9 years, and notice that I even struggle to remember what these cards do.
Brain Geyser says target opponent, and
target player.
It is a sorcery.
Okay, all right. Terror is 1 and a black for an instant that says destroy target non-artifact, non-black creature. It can't be regenerated, I think, is also on there, because I think the old word was bury. Shivan Dragon is 4 and 2 red for a 4/4 dragon creature that has fire breathing, which means that you can pay a red and it gets +1/+0 until the end of the turn. It also has flying. Regrowth is 1 and a green for a sorcery that says return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. And Black Lotus is a 0 mana artifact that you can tap and sacrifice it to add 3 mana of any one color to your mana pool. Whew, that was a mouthful. Worth noting that these cards also still observe their timing restrictions. So Disenchant, Disenchant and Terror you can cast as instants, but you can't like cast Black Lotus at instant speed. You can only cast it anytime you could cast a sorcery.
Yes.
And that's also something that's kind of lost in transition with these cards not being explained what they are.
I will agree with you. I didn't actually think about that when I was doing it. I just thought this is another part of a infinite combo to just win the game on the spot. So I'm just going to explain this a little bit. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but Garth One Eye, as well as Deadeye Navigator, creates you infinite mana because you're able to, tap Garth, make a Black Lotus, cast it for free, crack the Black Lotus for 3 blue. Have a blue floating, use the 2 blue for the activated ability to blink Garth One Eye, because it's a new iteration of Garth. He comes back untapped, and you can then cast the Black Lotus again. You can keep doing that to generate infinite blue mana, and then use that infinite blue mana to then get infinite of the other colored manas, but you wouldn't even need to, because you would just cast a Brain Geyser, X equaling your opponent's library, get them to draw their library +1, they lose, do that 3 more times, you win the game.
Not that you also need haste on that combo.
What's that?
You need haste on that combo.
That is totally
Garth
fine.
has to tap.
You can totally find haste enablers in all those colors that are quite easy to get.
I personally will be building Garth. I'm going to build him in a more fair way than most people are thinking about. Garth with a sack outlet means that you can like tap Garth, make a copy of Regrowth, and then like with that on the stack, you can sack Garth and Regrowth him back and cast him again, and do all kinds of shenanigans with that. I think it is powerful. I think Garth is powerful. I think that the format will self-correct for him, and I really don't think that we'll have anything to worry about. It is a human wizard. Garth is a human wizard, both relevant creature types. But I think that we will be fine with him being in the format.
Yeah, and enough about Garth, because he is quite strong. We could literally just have a whole episode about Garth. Let's move on to the next one, and it is Lonus, Cryptozoologist. It's a green and a blue for a 1/2 legendary creature Snake Elf Scout. That says, whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, investigate, and you can tap, sacrifice X clues. Target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order.
This is actually one of my favorite cards in the set. I think this one actually has some modern playability, possibly. But for the purposes of Commander, I think this is actually a Simic card that does something very un-Simic-like. Like, this is very different compared to generically good Simic cards we've seen in the past.
Yeah, most definitely. It doesn't draw you a card, and it doesn't play a land. So
it kind of draws your card.
It kind of does, yes, but it doesn't just say like put a land on the battlefield or draw a card, which is what we see from a lot of Simic commanders. This one does it in a very unique kind of way, and I like that. We got a very unique Simic commander in Commander Legends. It was the Salamander commander, which is
Hitomi?
just no, not that one, not the Cascade one. The one that gives your opponents salamanders.
Oh, yeah. I know which one you're talking about, but I can't remember the name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. And I swear, people just scream at us through their headphones going, it's this card, but I can't think of the name. If you can, awesome, tweet it at us, because I wanna hear your feedback on that one. But yeah, this is really cool, man. Like, it's a snake elf scout. Like, that's so many different weird creature types. But also it wants you to make clues, and with the new Adrix and Nev being in Simic as well, this would go really well in that deck if you wanted to go clue tribal to then kind of play out of your opponent's library. Yeah, I love it. I reckon it's great. I reckon this is a really cool, fun Simic commander that I might actually end up building for the podcast.
Sounds good.
So moving on, we have a Selesnya commander here. It is Sethis Harvest's Hand. It's almost kind of like a throwbacky a nod to the god from Theros that I'm just... Karametra. I was drawing a blank, and then I didn't. Karametra, god of the harvest. So it is green and a white for a 1/2 legendary enchantment creature nymph. that says whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you gain 1 life and draw a card.
Not gonna lie, not really a lot to say about this card. It's an enchantress, but it's one of the most efficient ones they've ever printed. It's 2 mana. It is an enchantment itself. It's legendary, so you can play it as your commander if you should so choose. Just a great card overall.
Yeah, I really don't have anything else to say about it. It's an enchantress card. It either goes in an enchantress deck or at the helm of an enchantress deck. Just play enchantments, draw cards, gain life. I mean, not much else you really say about that one. But this last card we have here, so this is the last one for the day. It is Yusri, Fortune's Flame. I probably messed that up as well. People love to flip coins in Commander, and I didn't realize how much people like to flip coins until we got Krark the Thumbless from Commander Legends. But this is 1 blue and a red for a 3/2 legendary creature Efrit that has flying and says, whenever Yusri Fortune's Flame attacks, choose a number between 1 and 5, flip that many coins. For each flip you win, draw a card. For each flip you lose, Yusri deals 2 damage to you. If you've won 5 flips this way, you may cast spells from your hand this turn without paying their mana costs.
All right, there's a lot going on here. First thing I want to mention is that Yusri, as well as Sithis, the last card we talked about, they both actually only have a species or a race. So Yusri is an Ifrit and Sithis is a nymph. A lot of cards that get printed these days have both a race and an occupation, like Elf Scout or Human Shaman. Like Garth is a human wizard, but Yusri and Sithis actually only have a race, no occupation. I think another very popular creature that is like this is Arcanus, the Omnipotent. He's just a wizard, nothing else, just a wizard. He just whizzes. Anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about Yusri. I actually had a little bit of a conversation about this card with somebody at my LGS when this card was first spoiled. And yes, this can rack up the damage, but since it is the creature dealing the damage to you, if you give Yusri lifelink, it actually has 0 downside. Because it is dealing the damage to you, but because it has lifelink, you just gain that right back. So if you were to build this deck, which I'm sure a lot of people are going to, I'd recommend throwing a couple things that give lifelink in there, like Basilisk Collar, Batter Skull, things like that. Outside of that, like even if I were to flip 5 coins, draw 2 cards, and take 6 damage, I think I'm okay with that exchange, especially if I have the potential to be able to Omniscience that turn. That's a pretty powerful effect, and everybody knows, maybe not everybody because it's an older card, but Krark's Thumb lets you flip a coin twice, so you can pick the result that you want. And that, I don't know, this card seems like it could potentially set up maybe like a Crazy Storm turn, or if you want to build it just completely Chaos, that's probably a really fun deck, honestly. Because after you Chaos, you get to cast the new spells that you get in your hand. I don't know. I'm very excited to see what people do with Yusri.
Yeah, and so am I. And that's it. That's all the cards that we think that you should be looking at and looking for at the Modern Horizons 2 pre-release that I believe is this weekend. So you got a day before this episode goes live. If you're listening to it before the pre-release, good luck. Have fun. If you're listening to it after, I hope you pulled all the cards that you wanted and played all the games that you wanted to. If you wanted any more explanations or anything about these cards, or just to get at us at all, you can do that on Twitter and Instagram at CMDR@arms. You can also, if you need to pick up any of these cards, if you're listening to it after the pre-release, or any other sealed product, if you want to pick up a box or booster packs or whatever, you can do that through our TCG affiliate link at tcg.com/commander@arms. That helps us, helps you, and also helps your local game stores while still being able to buy online and socially distant. We have the Commander at Arms podcast channel shirt that you can get in the show notes in the link below. Also, we still have the giveaway happening. Like I said at the start of the episode, you can enter that with retweeting and following us on Twitter or on Instagram, or becoming a patron. You can do that at patreon.com/commander@arms. I want to thank all the patrons for their support one more time this episode. And Paul, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, of course. Thank you to our newest patron. That your support really means a lot to me and James. I hope you're enjoying what you've heard so far. Also, to anybody who is listening to this episode, thank you for doing so. Even if this is the first and only episode you ever have or ever will listen to, it means a lot to me and James that you took the time to do that. If you did like what you heard, please feel free to share it around with friends, get them involved. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. Let us know your opinions. If you have questions or anything, we're always happy to help. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. I have nothing else to say. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Also, don't forget to go and check out the YouTube channel and go and subscribe and hit the notification bell for all of our content over there as well. And with that, I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you've been listening to the newest episode of the Commander at Arms podcast.
Peace.
See ya.